All right, I've asked that everybody get into the virtual desktop and bring up Eclipse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my Payroll 3 project by double clicking on it. And I'm going to open up the source file that's right here. So I'm going to open that. And all I want to do is just literally copy all of it to the clipboard. Okay? I think we all know how to do that. Hopefully everybody knows how to do that. So again, open up the file, copy everything to the clipboard, then close it. In fact, I don't need the project anymore, so I'm going to right mouse click and close the entire project. All right. Then you know the drill by now. File, new, Java project. I'm going to call this one payroll. There's going to be two that we're going to create, so I'm going to call this 04A and click finish. And then come in here, right mouse click on that, new package. As always, edu.jscott.blackhawk.jscott, I guess it is. And finish. And then right mouse click one more time, new class. And again, I'm going to call this payroll. I don't need to have a main because I'm just copying everything in. All right. I'll give you a second to do that. Hopefully that won't be any problem for anybody. Again, what I've asked you to do was to take everything from the last payroll program that we did from Payroll 3 and copy it to the clipboard, then create a new project and copy all that information in. So why are we doing this? I'll take your question in a second. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to put a counter in here. We're going to assume, because I don't want you to have to put in 100 and type in employee information for 100 people. So we're just going to assume that this place has 3 employees. Yes.
So I have 1, 2A, and 2B. I don't have a 3. I'm just asking.
Do the 2B. That's fine. It won't matter.
I was just like, whoa.
Yeah, maybe if you don't have a 2B, then that's fine. Just do the, or if you don't have a payroll 3, just do the 2B. That's fine. But I want you to have something that at least looks like this. All right, because we're not going to really add very much code to it, to be honest with you. So if you're a little behind or whatever, hopefully you'll be able to catch up pretty fast because we're really and truly, we're not adding any new variables. All right. And I am going to add a new constant up here. Again, I'm going to assume we have 3 employees. Everybody cool with that? Again, you can put anything you want in here. You could put 50, but then it's going to expect that you're going to type in information for 50 different people, which you probably don't want to do. All right, so I'm going to say final here, int, and I just called it tot.emps for total employees, and I set it equal to 3. All right, so I've got my maximum non-overtime hours, my overtime rate, and I'll have 3 employees. Okay. Again, you'll notice that this has got the yellow underline. It's got the message over here that says, hey, you've created this thing called tot.emps and you're not using it for anything. We're going to fix that in just a minute. For every employee, we're still going to read in their first name, their last name, all right, their hours, and their rate, and we're still going to figure out their gross. Same exact way that we did it before. So there is nothing new. Double check and make sure I'm taping. There is nothing new there, okay? So there's nothing new there. So we'll read in the first name, we'll read in the last name, we'll read the hours into an input string and convert it over, all right, etc. All right. One thing I did add to this was I added the decimal formatter class Remember, this is one way that you can do this. So I actually put another line here that says decimal, decimal format, and I called it formatter. You can call it whatever you want, equals new decimal format, and I'm going to run out of room, so I'm going to put it on the next line. Don't worry, that error will go away in just a minute. All right, so I'm setting up a new decimal format. This is assuming that the biggest gross pay I'm going to have in here is $999,999,999.99. I would think that's probably a pretty safe assumption.
Unless you're Richard Branson.
Well, again, there are a few people. You'll notice I get the error, as you know. If I take my mouse and put it over the error, it says I want to grab the first quick fix, which is to import the decimal format class. Click that. The error goes away because it just added this. Okay? And you may or may not have noticed, not only did it add it, it even adds it in your list and it puts it in alphabetic order. All right? So I just added that. Again, I still get the underscores there, or not the underscore, the yellow underline, because it's telling me I've got this thing called formatter and I'm not using it for anything. All right? I could run the program right now in its current format, even with these two warnings, and it would work just fine. The problem is, in its current format, all right, the problem is that it's only going to account for one employee. I want to account for all of our employees. So what I'm going to do, and it's going to do not sleight of hand, but we're going to move some stuff around a little bit, but I'm going to put a for loop in here. So I'm going to say for int LCV equals 0, LCV less than, what do we call it? Totems. All right, so somebody tell me, what is this doing? And that's a semicolon, not a comma. What is this doing? Our first employee technically is employee 0. Our second employee is employee 1. And our third employee is employee 2. Could I have made them employees 1, 2, and 3? Yes, we could have. I didn't want to do that. Why? Because when we get up to chapter 6 or 7, whatever the heck it is, and we work with arrays, you have to start learning to count by 0. So let's just do it now. All right? Now, I want all this stuff, all this, basically the rest of the program, except for my end of program, I want everything to be inside of that for loop. Does that make sense to people? All right, because I want to do it 3 times. So I'm going to hit enter and put in my curly. Well, then I got to put the other curly way down at the bottom here. All right. And now I just want to move all this stuff over so it looks a little nicer. So I'm going to move this over. So otherwise it'll go off the screen. So I'm just going to start tabbing this stuff over. Okay, that's it. There's nothing more to add. But ideally now, if we did this correctly, all right, if we did this correctly, it's going to run through this 3 times. So I'm going to save this, and before I run it, I'm going to move this up so you can see everything that's in here. We'll go back to the program in a minute, but I'm going to do a run. All right, first name, Jeff, Scott, 40 hours, $10 an hour. There's my information. I guess I don't even need this, do I? So there's the first one. Of course, I shouldn't have done that. Now I made my There we go. Now there's the second one. There's the third one. Okay? Now, and when I go back into here, there's all the information, and that's what I used in here. I don't know why it didn't give me 2 decimal places, but it didn't. Maybe I didn't put the formatter on there. I don't know. But you can see all the information. But the point is, I've now got the information on there for 3 different employees. So if my company grows and I now have 100, I can change that from 3 to 100. The problem with that is if I change that from 3 to 100, somebody's got to key in all that information. And if it doesn't change week to week, if the number of hours they work doesn't change and their hourly rate doesn't change, that seems like a lot of extraneous type of typing for somebody to have to do. So we're going to make a change to this in just a minute, and we're going to write the information out to a file. And then we could use that file that we create. If we needed to, we could use that output file as input if we needed to run the program again. All right. Is there anything that's in here? I'm still not, I don't think I use the formatter. That's the problem. All right, so there, formatter dot format hours. I don't want that darn arg0 that it always puts in there. And actually, I don't want to do that for the hours because otherwise I'll have a $sign in for the hours, which would look dumb. All right. So now when I put that information and it prints out here, let's do another, let's just save it and do a run. And now when we look at it down here, you can see our formatting has been put in. Okay? The point is, what I want to get to in here is I want you to understand that what we did was we made very few changes to the program. So let's look at the changes we did make. I'll take your question then. The first change is we put in a constant to show the total number of employees we had. The reason for doing that, we didn't have to do that. I could have just made that down here at 3. That would have been fine. But over time, that number may change. The program might get very big, and I might end up using that number 3 all over the place. This way, it's defined in one place. Again, that's why you define a constant. So we put that in there. I put this decimal formatter in there. There are other ways to format. Again, we talked about a couple of them, using printf, using the string dot format, and there's even other ways that the book doesn't get into. But then we took everything that we were doing in here, everything. So this was the code that we had in here previously. All of that code right there, plus that end program. But now we took all of it and we put it within the for loop. So that said 3 times, ask for the person's first name, their last name, their hours, and their rate. Figure out their gross pay, and then print out all the information. Then do the next person and print out all the information. Then do the next person and print out all the information. Does that make sense? All right. Because this is one of the most basic control structures there is. We could have done this with a while loop. All right, I could have said while LCV. I could have set it equal to 0 or set it equal to 1, whatever I wanted to do, and we could have done it like that also. All right. This seemed to be just as good a way as any other one to do it. Question?
To your output said double $.
two of my outputs had double dollar signs, and that's this one, because I don't need that anymore, and that would have been probably all of them. I don't need that anymore because in my formatter pattern, I put in the dollar sign. So, I mean, not that that would be wrong, it just was would be ugly to look at. No, just got one. All right. And again, we could have fixed this. In other words, I mean, if I wanted to, think about this. All right, where we've got the first name, etc., all this other stuff in here, I could have put another line in here that said, you don't have to do this, but system.out.println, and I could have said here, employee number, all right, plus, and I could say LCV plus 1 here. So that would say employee 1, employee 2, and employee 3. If we really wanted to do that, we could. There's nothing at all wrong with doing that. It would have been fine. All right, semicolon. So notice the difference now is if I save this and go and run it again, why does it give me an error? Oh, because I need 2 parens. All right, and notice I put the LCV plus 1 in there. I want it to do that calculation and then use that in here. So what should change in here? Is now when we look at how it printed out in our output down here, is now it has employee 1, employee 2, and employee 3. All right, and then lastly, what I probably should have done to print it up even a little bit more would be to put a \n there, because then I'd have some blank lines in between each employee. So now you'll notice if you take a look at this, it's spaced out a little. It's a little easier to read right now. It's not fantastic, but it's getting there. All right. So really I made almost no changes in here to get all that information in. I think everyone would agree with that. All right. Again, we added a variable, a constant, to show the total number of employees that we had. We created a decimal format object, and we put everything other than that last line into a for loop. Any questions on that? All right. If there are no questions on that, what I'd like you to do is make sure you save this. If you haven't already, I have. Copy all of it to the clipboard, like we just did, then close this project. And we're going to come in and create another project, and we're going to call this Payroll 04B. It's going to be the same project, except I'm going to add file handling to it. All right? We could have done it on the original one, but now I've got both of these. I'll have one with the file handling and one without the file handling. So I'm going to add a package. I'm going to add my class, which again will be payroll. I don't need any of this. And I'm going to paste it in. All right, so I now have the same exact program that I just did. All right, so what I want to add into this is I want to add what we need in order to be able to create a file from this. All right, So first thing I have to do, if you look up on the screen here, is in main, I've got to put in this. Throws IO exception. Again, what that means is it is possible, because I will be working with files, it is possible that I'll have an error. You'll notice how it turns, so I put my mouse over it, and it says, oh, do you want to import java.io? You bet I do. So there it is up there. All right. And I could put IO exception. I could even put just io.star if I wanted to. All right. Either one would work. Now, that's not everything, but that's the start. So again, I imported java.io.star at the top, and I added to my main throws IO exception. When we get to chapter 11, you'll learn how to write your own exceptions. For instance, if I asked you to enter a number between 1 and 100, all right, and you entered in something that made absolutely no sense. Let's just say you entered a gazillion or a million or whatever. All right, you could just come up with a message, but what if they kept doing it? All right, we could literally come up with our own error that came up and said, hey, the program instructions say enter a number and etc. And we'll get to that later on. All right, so we're throwing our IO exception. Under our decimal formatter, we're going to add one more thing here. We're going to add a print writer, and we're going to set that equal to, we're going to call it output file, and we're going to set that equal to a new print writer that we'll call employees.txt. All right. Notice, because I previously went in and added this java.io.star, I'm not getting an error message here. Okay? If you added what they said, java.io.io exception, you might get an error right here. But by saying io.star, that handles everything input and it handles everything output. All right. We're still throwing everything out on the screen. That's not a problem. We're still throwing all that junk we threw out on the screen before. But what I want to do now is where it says system.out.println, all these system.outs, I want to change each one of those to output file.println. And even the last one I'll change. I can leave the last one in there, so that'll say up on the screen, end of program. All right. Now, this isn't written in the most pure way possible. And what I mean by that is what I really should have done. All right, I might have wanted to go in there and check to see if the file exists as they showed in the book. Because this is kind of a recipe for disaster. All right, because the program could blow up or whatever. And when I'm all done, would kind of be nice to say output file dot close. All right. Again, if you do not do that, if you do not open or close the output file, as I mentioned, it will be closed automatically for you. All right. And let's look at one more thing here. Would everybody agree now we're going to try to send this to a file, but we've got 3 employees. Would everybody agree with that? Well, now that we've got 3 employees, wouldn't it be kind of nice if we came in here and had an accumulator? How about double tote gross? We'll set that equal to 0.0. And we'll add up the gross pays for all 3 of our employees, and when we're all done, we'll print that out. Bless you. You can print that out on the screen. You can set it to a file. You can do both. all right? But I'm going to have this tote gross now I'm going to add. Well, then I got to make sure that every time I figure this out and I do the gross, I better go and add that, right? So I want to say tote gross plus equal gross. Tote gross is an accumulator. So if I do 3 employees, if I do me, and I say hours 20, rate 20, it should give me my gross as being 400. Then so that's employee 1. If employee 2, I do Bob Smith, and 30 and 30, that should be 900. But now, as we go through this, the tote gross, when we first started, was 0. But after me, it's 400. After Bob, it's 400 plus 900. So in other words, it's 1,300. And then for employee 3, we'll do Mary Wilson, who worked 50 hours and makes $10 an hour, and that's 550. All right. So we should add 550 to that. So when we get all done, it should have 1,850 should be our total gross. Does that make sense? I mean, that's just typical type of data processing that you would be asked to do. All right. And again, it's interesting in this program because some people come into the program and talk to me and go, you know what? I want to just write web pages. I don't want a frickin' program. You know, if you write web pages, you're going to frickin' program. All right. And otherwise, you're going to be a web designer. And then basically all you're going to do is learn CSS up the wazoo. All right. So I don't know if there's any error in here. John, you're usually my spotter if there's any errors, but I'm going to try to run it. What's that?
There's one on the name of your file.
Thank you. Well, it's technically that's not an error, but it would have called it employees. Or whatever. All right, so let's try it and see what happens. Run, run. All right, that looks the way we thought it would.
33.
That looks the way we thought it would. All right, and that looks the way we thought it would. Okay, the only thing it says here now is end program. All right, now I'm going to move over to here. It really should have added it right here, but I don't see it there. That's not a good sign. It's not going to be in there. We did everything right, but there's some goofy thing that Eclipse makes you do in order to be able to save a file to the right place. And I didn't path it correctly.
Oh, I found it. It's in the folder
Okay.
where, if you go out onto your web browser on the desktop, wherever you path it to, it should be in there.
Oh, so it should be under my 140. Is that in here?
If you go into payroll, yeah.
There's employees.txt. Thank you. And there's the information. All right. So what if we didn't want it there? We would have had to have put the exact path name of where that was supposed to go. All right. But again, the idea behind showing you that, and thank you, Jared, the idea behind showing you that is we really, when you look at it between these two things, we didn't add much code. You had the basic stuff in there anyway. In the first example, all we added was the loop and the decimal formatter. In the second one, it was the ability to write to a file. Now again, remember the way that this is set up is if we run the program again, it's not going to keep adding onto that file. It's going to start all over again. If we wanted to do that, rather than a print writer, we do the file writer and assign it to a print writer, set that equal to true. All right. The program itself is still a work in progress. Again, we might have wanted to come in here, just so you see this. We could have come back into here, and as an example, where we were printing all that stuff out, maybe we wanted to come in here after we did each one and just come in and said output file dot print line, double quote, which would have printed a blank line in between each employee. All right. Then when we were all done, we've got that system.out end of program, but one thing we don't have, we could have come in here and said output.file.println total gross for all employees formatter.format total gross. All right, and that would have also printed that in then at the end of the file. Okay? Any questions on that? When you come in here on Wednesday, I'm going to have you do 2 programs in the first hour. The first one is just kind of to get you going. Literally, you should be able to do it like that in about 5 minutes. Seriously. And the second one is going to take you a little bit longer. But then again, afterwards, then I'm going to, after we take a break, do the same thing where I'm going to show you. You won't have to save these. You won't have to turn these in. I just want to make sure, because these are important ideas. So we went over last time. We went over the if. We haven't really done anything with a switch yet, but we can. But now we'll go over some looping constructs. I'll probably even have you write it to a file just so you get used to doing that. All right? And by the end of class on Wednesday, I'll give you your next assignment. And then next week, again, will be lab. All right? Questions? I am going to go over chapters 7 and 8 this afternoon if you're in the jQuery class. All right, we're going to do 7 and 8 today, 9 because it's one of the heavier chapters in the book on Wednesday. Then next Monday, we should be able to do 10 and 11, and then you'll have your next assignment. You're actually going to probably like this one. All right? Yes.
Oh, really? I do like it already.
We're going to have, it's Bernie Sanders trying to make it to the White House. Oh, Hillary stopped him. Oh, we'll try it again.
Is that really what we're doing?
Yes.
That's awesome.
We're not going to start with that one. We're going to start with it much simpler, and we're going to build it. We're just going to put some shapes in there, and then we're going to add all that stuff to it. I'm trying to get it through here, so show you how it looks when it actually. Yeah. Well, one thing I thought of doing was having like five or six of these, and having one be Hillary, one be Trump, one be Cruz, and then you would have to go in there in your code and figure out which one bopped them. All right, and we could do it that way, but well, if he gets all the way through.
What if we just increase the speed at which he moves?
Yeah, there you go. No, but what we've done in here is we're using some random number type of stuff, and it could be done this way. But I just set it up right now with each one of these moves basically one unit faster than the previous one. All right. But we could do this, and we could do it where you had, if you wanted to, you could add more players here. You could vary the speeds. You could have different levels. So there's a lot of different ways that this could be improved or worked on or whatever. Whatever. It says Bernie has reached the White House or something like that. So yeah, but we're not going to start it like that. We're just going to start with some. We're not going to worry about backgrounds or anything else. And if you don't like my background, you can change it. You can change it to anything you want to change it to. All right.
So much about programming for making a game, even if it's simple.
Well, what this will do right now, I've just got everything in here, and we're going to set up objects. And we're going to come through here and we're going to write our own methods to do this. All right. So that's what we'll start on Wednesday. And I'd like everybody to take that and either take that or a version of it, put that onto their site also. That'll be your next assignment. There's not going to be much work to doing that. All right? I'm done.